The Gnostic Gospels are a collection of about 54 ancient texts based upon the teachings of several spiritual leaders, which were written from the 2nd to the 4th century AD. The sayings of the Gospel of Thomas, compiled circa 140, may include some traditions even older than some of the Gospels of the New Testament, possibly as early as the second half of the 1st century. These Gospels are not part of the standard biblical canon of any mainstream Christian denomination, and as such are part of what is called the New Testament apocrypha. Recent novels, films, and video games that refer to the Gospels have increased public interest. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge, which is often used in Greek philosophy in a manner more consistent with the English Enlightenment. Some scholars continue to maintain traditional dating for the emergence of Gnostic philosophy and religious movements. It is now generally believed that Gnosticism was a Jewish movement which emerged directly in reaction to Christianity. The name Christian Gnostics came to represent a segment of the early Christian community that believed that salvation lay not in faith in Christ, but in psychic and pneumatic souls learning to free themselves from the material world via the revelation. According to this tradition, the answers to spiritual questions are to be found within, not without. Some scholars, such as Edward Conze and Elaine Pagels, have suggested that Gnosticism blends teachings like those attributed to Jesus Christ with teachings found in Eastern traditions. Dating. The documents which comprise the collection of Gnostic Gospels were not discovered at a single time, but rather as a series of finds. The Nag Hammadi library was discovered accidentally by two farmers in December 1945 and was named for the area in Egypt where it had been hidden for centuries. Other documents included in what are now known as the Gnostic Gospels were found at different times and locations, such as the Gospel of Mary, which was recovered in 1896 as part of the Akhmim Codex and published in 1955. Some documents were duplicated in different finds, and others, such as with the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, only one copy is currently known to exist, although the manuscripts discovered at Nag Hammadi are generally dated to the 4th century. There is some debate regarding the original composition of the texts. A wide range and the majority of scholars date authorship of the Gnostic Gospel of Nag Hammadi to the 2nd and 3rd century. Scholars with a focus on Christianity tend to date the Gospels mentioned by Irenaeus to the 2nd century, and the Gospels mentioned solely by Jerome to the 4th century. The traditional dating of the Gospels derives primarily from this division. Other scholars with a deeper focus on pagan and Jewish literature of the period tend to date primarily based on the type of the work. The Gospel of Thomas is held by most to be the earliest of the Gnostic Gospels composed. Scholars generally date the text to the early mid-2nd century. The Gospel of Thomas, it is often claimed, has some Gnostic elements but lacks the full Gnostic cosmology. However, even the description of these elements as Gnostic is based mainly upon the presupposition that the text as a whole is a Gnostic Gospel, and this idea itself is based upon little other than the fact that it was found along with Gnostic texts at Nag Hammadi. Some scholars, including Nicholas Perry, argue that Thomas is dependent on the Dites Aaron, which was composed shortly after 172 by Tatian in Syria. A minority view contends for an early date of perhaps 50, citing a relationship to the hypothetical Q document among other reasons. The Gospel of the Lord, a Gnostic but otherwise non-canonical text, can be dated approximately during the time of Marcion in the early 2nd century. The traditional view holds Marcion did not compose the Gospel directly but expunged all the things that oppose his view, but retained those things that accord with his opinion. The traditional view and dating has continued to be affirmed by the mainstream of biblical scholars. However, G.R.S. Mead, his Gospel was presumably the collection of sayings in use among the Pauline churches of his day. Of course, the patristic writers say that Marcion mutilated Luke's version, have argued that Marcion's Gospel predates the canonical Luke and was in use in Pauline churches. The Gospel of Truth and the teachings of the Pistis Sophia can be approximately dated to the early 2nd century, as they were part of the original Valentinian school, though the Gospel itself is 3rd century. Documents with a Sethian influence, like the Gospel of Judas, or outright Sethian like Coptic Gospel of the Egyptians, can be dated substantially later than 40 and substantially earlier than 250, most scholars giving them a 2nd century date. More conservative scholars using the traditional dating method would argue in these cases for the early 3rd century. Some Gnostic Gospels make use of fully developed Neoplatonism and thus need to be dated after Plotinus in the 3rd century. Selected Gospels. Though there are many documents that could be included among the Gnostic Gospels, the term most commonly refers to the following: Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Truth, Gospel of Philip IV. Gospel of Judas.